Why couldn't Loki control Tony Stark? The second episode of Loki's second season revealed a much more humanized Sylvie, who has decided to work in a McDonald's and experience what a normal life feels like. However, TVA leaders are still in pursuit of her and wish to prune the timelines and continue the work of the He Who Remains. In this video, we will be talking about the most interesting things in the second episode of Loki, and the references to Iron Man, which I assure you will give much to talk about in the future. And if you like everything related to the Marvel Universe, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Welcome to the Oasis Geek. This episode starts in London in 1977, on the sacred timeline, that is to say, the main timeline, or at least the one that remains protected. This is where Loki is along with Mobius, looking for the traces of a TVA agent who was sent to catch Sylvie. According to Tempad records, it is possible that X5 was at this location. Upon arriving in London, Loki and Mobius realize that X5, or Bradwolf, has become a famous actor who has abandoned his job and lost track of Sylvie. What I theorize happened, because of something Loki mentions in this episode, is that when Bradwolf met Loki's variant Sylvie, Sylvie restored his memory, and Brad realized that everything that happened in the TVA was not his real life, and began to pursue his life as an actor. Obviously, X5 tries to escape from Mobius and Loki, but is easily caught as Loki uses magic. One mystery proposed in the episode is, what happened to Renslayer? This was one of the main characters in the first season, but after it was revealed that she was working with the false gods, and He Who Remains, we have not seen her. However, her role will be important later on. Brad makes a deal with Loki and Mobius. He will help them, but they must return him to his normal life on the sacred timeline, where he is an actor. But before they reach an agreement, Bradwolf mentions to Mobius that the TVA is fake, and how his life was taken from him. We see for a moment how Mobius loses control and hits him. Although he makes it look like it doesn't really affect him, it's possible that Mobius is thinking about his real family, but that's a topic for another video. The crisis in the TVA has not stopped yet, because although OB was able to restore control of the timeline, it was revealed in this episode that the TVA itself will collapse at any time, because you cannot release energy by opening some doors, the same that only He Who Remains could open. While OB reveals the truth, he also mentions to them that he was the one who created the TVA manual, confirming the theory we proposed last week, on which we stated that OB had created the TVA with He Who Remains. The odds that OB is a variant of Kang have increased in this episode, but we will also talk about this in its own video. It is mentioned that the only way to save the TVA is to convince Miss Minutes to help them and Renslayer, who were helpers of the protective Kang. This is quite interesting because Loki has become a type of leader of the TVA. Maybe this was the plan of He Who Remains from the beginning. Later, Loki is reunited with Sylvie, where Bradwolf reveals to them that the TVA wants to attack the multiverse and destroy the temporal lines that are emerging in an uncontrolled way. When Loki returns with Mobius and Sylvie to the TVA, they are already attacking the multiverse and have managed to destroy thousands of realities, something that affects Sylvie, and she decides not to help Loki. Sylvie returns to the sacred timeline, one of the few places that were not pruned. This episode was full of questions about what is real and what is fake, and how our memories affect our perception of morality. We also saw how Loki seemed to be much more empathetic and human than the version we saw of him in the first season. It's a Loki who continues to redeem himself for his sins. But what is the connection to Iron Man that this episode has? In one of the scenes, Loki reminds Mobius of his invasion of New York. He mentions how he and his army of Chitauri confronted the Avengers, and how he tried to assimilate Tony Stark using the Mind Gem. This is perhaps one of the most important scenes in the first Avengers movie, as it is a moment where Loki understands that he is not a god, and he is not almighty. However, it revives the question we have been asking ourselves for decades, and that is why didn't the Mind Gem work on Tony Stark? The mind gem at the time was in a scepter, a technological artifact given to Loki by Thanos. Carrying a gem in your hands could mean death, as they are too powerful. This is the reason Thanos needed a gauntlet, and possibly the reason the mind gem didn't work on Iron Man. What Loki did not know about Tony Stark is that he did not have a human heart in his chest, but a nuclear reactor with elements created by Tony himself. It is possible that the scepter did not detect the presence of a human, but rather, what it detected when it touched Tony was the energy source. The mind gem did not find a mind to assimilate. Some people theorize that when Tony Stark created his new element, he created something similar to an infinity gem. But more likely, it is due to the use of artifacts to keep the gems. This reference to Tony Stark will not be the last, and surely Loki must be questioning why the gem did not work with Tony if he was a mere human. Perhaps this is the door for Loki to return in the future to Tony Stark, even if it is in the past. Now, with the possible collapse of the TVA, Sylvie needs a reason to protect this place. It's not enough to keep people from dying at the hands of these Guardians of Time. Sylvie needs to see the real threat. I'm talking about Kang the Conqueror. Although in this episode we didn't see Kang's character, we know it's only a matter of time before we see the true villain of this story reveal himself. In the next episode, we could see Loki and Mobius traveling through time, looking for Miss Minutes and Renslayer to prevent the destruction of the TVA. And this is perhaps the most interesting thing this episode left us with. Loki faithfully believed he who remains. Loki has had many opportunities to escape, but he did not. This means that Loki is now an Avenger, or at least a hero of the multiverse. But tell me, what are your thoughts about all this? What did you like most about the second episode? And why do you think Loki couldn't control Tony Stark? And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You are on Oasis Geek.